Continuing our series on the differences between the Blendtec Total Blender and the Vitamix 5200 with our second video in our 5-part series. If you're in the market for a high-performance blender and you're doing your research, as most people do, there is a great chance that your final decision will come down between the 5200 and the Total Blender. They are generally considered to be the two finest high-performance blenders on the market today. Now, in the first video, we ran a test to determine if there was any noticeable power difference between the 5200 and the Total Blender. We did a vegetable juice. We used the same ingredients in both machines. We ran them on the same speeds for the same length of time. I believe it was a 50-second cycle, and the ultimate conclusion from that test was that there was no noticeable difference between the textures of the two juices. Now, most of us know that the Vitamix is generally thought of to be a 2-horsepower machine. The Blendtec is generally considered to be a 3-horsepower machine, and that may very well be the case. However, a lot more than simply horsepower goes into determining how well your fruits and vegetables are broken down in these two machines. RPMs, blade speeds, blade designs, how wide that blade is at its tips, how much surface area passes with each revolution, the jar design, torque. All of these factors go into determining how these machines perform. So it's not a fair test to simply look at the literature and determine, because the Blendtec has a higher listed horsepower motor than the Vitamix, that it is necessarily a stronger machine. The ultimate conclusion should be determined by how well they perform. Yesterday's test was relatively short. We will do a much longer test today. This is going to be a long cycle test to determine if there's any power differences between the machine, and we're going to do that today by cooking a soup. Many of you may already know that these machines generate such high blade speeds that the friction created by those blades against the ingredients loaded in the jar, so much friction can be created that way that you can actually cook in these machines. Now, you could actually boil ingredients in these machines if you wanted to. I don't know very many practical applications of boiling fruits and vegetables. That said, you could certainly do it in these machines. We're not going to go to that extreme today. In fact, we could run this test with nothing but water if we wanted to, but we might as well make a soup. Let's make it somewhat practical. We'll be doing a vegetable soup today. This is not a recipe that you're going to find in any book. It just happens to be a set of ingredients that I have on hand. This will be a vegetable soup based on identical ingredients loaded into the jar. We will run them at the exact same speed for the same length of time. These will be 3-minute cycles, and that should create a significant amount of heat in both jars. We'll take temperature readings before and after and see if there's any noticeable difference between the two. I will be using a little water. I have a digital thermometer. We'll take a quick reading of the water. It should be room temperature or close to it. 77.9 degrees is the reading for the water. It really doesn't matter how hot or cold this water is, as long as it's the same temperature going into both jars. We'll load a few Roma tomatoes into the jars. Load a little carrot. This is the equivalent of about 3/4 of a stick of carrot. It doesn't matter, again, as long as it's the same. A little celery. Some red onion. This is bell pepper. This is cilantro. This might make a great tortilla soup. In fact, I do a demonstration very similar to this in the wholesale clubs where I do road shows. I use a taco seasoning that makes a great tortilla soup. I don't have that on hand, so I'll season it with a little pepper. We will put exactly 1 cup of water into both jars. Might as well take a quick temperature reading on both. 77.5 again on the Blendtec. 77.3 on the Vitamix. In my book, that's close enough to run the demonstration. We'll put the lids back on. Now, let me make one caveat here. This is an informative video. This is not for entertainment purposes. I'm going to be doing a 3-minute cycle on both machines. You are probably not going to want to sit here and watch 6 minutes worth of blending. I don't blame you if you don't. You can fast forward 3 minutes until we get to the end of the cycle. We'll take a temperature reading on the Blendtec, and then I will run another 3-minute cycle on the Vitamix. But I'm not going to edit this video. For authentication purposes, so that you know this is a legitimate test, we're going to run these machines and videotape them for the entire 3 minutes on each one. Okay, now the Blendtec has a pre-programmed soup cycle. If I press that button, it's going to create a soup warm enough to drink or eat in 90 seconds. But I want to run a 3-minute test for this one, so as soon as the 90 seconds is up, the machine will stop. I'll simply restart it again, and then we will run the Vitamix for exactly 3 minutes to make sure that we've run both for the same length of time. Here we go with the Blendtec. I will see you in 3 minutes. Okay, 3-minute cycle on the Blendtec. Good temperature reading, 134. We'll go ahead and start the Vitamix. If we need to use the tamper, we will. I'm not necessarily certain that we will. What you're reading on the Vitamix. 118. Strangely enough, if you're a raw foodist, you're probably never going to want to blend your soups or your juices or your smoothies or anything higher than 118 degrees. But in this particular test, running both machines for the same length of time with the exact same ingredients, the Blendtec did produce a higher temperature. It may be fair to say that in this particular instance, the Blendtec is a little bit more powerful machine. Again, it's all in the practical application, not necessarily what's written in the owner's manual. We'll do more tests. Please join us for the remaining 3 videos in the series. Until then, this is Jonathan, aka BD, for BlenderDude.com.